Okay, sorry. So make sure you know the three main components of the lymphatic system. Functions, obviously that's something I can ask you. Okay, immune response, that would be kind of the main, or one of the main parts.
Pushes blood back into the bloodstream type deal.
Fluid back to the bloodstream, sure. So returning fluid back to the circulatory system. And then maintenance of the immune response. And remember, just like blood, it can be used to distribute certain things. Not oxygen, because it doesn't have any oxygen-carrying molecules. So the oxygen, the carbon dioxide is all in the circulatory system, but hormones, nutrients, waste products, you can carry those around. Okay. I would know the basic setup of the lymphatic vessels. So things like the fact that they're low pressure, kind of open-ended where they're going to collect the fluid from the tissues. Because they're low pressure, remember they have to have the valve systems in them to keep the lymph fluid moving in the right direction. But you should also know about how they congregate to the different parts where they're going to hook into the circulatory system, so the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. And I would definitely know what each of those ducts, and what parts of the body each of those ducts actually drains. So, if I were to ask you on a test to shade in on the outline of a human where the right thoracic duct, or the parts of the body the right thoracic duct drains, you should be able to do that. Okay? Now, lymphocytes. You should know the three main types of lymphocytes. You should know the basic functions of each of them. And you should know the differences in their production. So remember, all three start off in the bone marrow. From stem cell, well, the B and the T cells can make more of themselves. But yeah, the ultimate source is the bone marrow. You know, you should know about how the T cells get modified in the thymus. No, those are the B. That's why they're called B cells.
And then the NK cells go to shit up.
Okay. As far as lymph organs go, you should have an understanding of the difference between a lymphoid nodule and a lymph node. But really, a lymphoid nodule is not considered an organ. It's just lymph tissue that's kind of organized in a certain place. Right, lymph nodules are just patches of lymphoid tissue that are going to guard entrances, so your tonsils, your adenoids are going to be examples of those lymphoid nodules. Throughout the body. I mean, there's enough you could count them fairly easily. There's few enough that you could count them fairly easily, but yes, the lymph nodes are spread throughout the body in different places. Okay, obvious places, your neck, armpits, groin. Remember, those are the things that swell when you get sick. you should know the basic setup of a lymph node. By that I mean lymph fluid comes in from one set of vessels, it goes out through the other. In the lymph nodes, it's filtered. For pathogens. And of course, that's why when you have pathogens in you, they tend to swell up. But it would be good to know that your lymph nodes are not good at filtering out cancerous cells, and that's why cancers can easily spread through your lymph tissue, your lymphatic vessels. So they're good at filtering out stuff that shouldn't be there, but they can't tell the difference between good cells of yours and cancerous cells of yours. Okay, but lymph nodes are considered true lymphatic organs. But also we talked about the thymus. So you should know the basic location of the thymus and the function of it. Basically, they take those cells from the bone marrow and turn them into T cells. Same thing for the spleen. You should know the basic place of the spleen and its function. So remember, the spleen has two kind of main functions. One of them is to filter pathogens. So they're sort of like lymph nodes. The spleen is sort of like lymph nodes in that way. But what does the spleen filter pathogens out of?
Does it filter pathogens or antigens?
Antigens, sorry. I mean, well, antigens are going to be on cells that you're... So it looks specifically for antigens and filters those things out. But remember, an antigen is just a protein on the outside of a cell. And so it's going to filter things out based on those antigens. But, I mean, you could say the overall function is to filter out those pathogens. Okay. But what does the spleen filter compared to a lymph node? Hmm? Fire?
Iron.
Oh, no. No, what fluid does the spleen filter?
Blood.
Blood. So the lymph nodes, sorry, maybe I wasn't being very clear. The lymph nodes filter the lymph fluid before it goes back to the blood. The spleen filters actual blood. But remember, compared to the kidneys, this filters more cells that shouldn't be there, whereas the kidneys are going to filter out certain chemicals. So they sort of have a similar function, but they're looking for different things. But remember, the spleen also is important in initiating B and T cells in the immune response. And it does store iron.
Very sensitive.
Okay. Now, as far as your immune response, you should be able to explain the difference between specific and non-specific defenses. That shouldn't be terribly hard. The names basically give it to you. Specific defenses are going to be things that target specific types of pathogens, whereas non-specific defenses are going to be the kind of things that protect you from a wide array of things. But for each of those different things, you should be able to list the different types of defenses that we have. So for non-specific defenses, we talked about 7 different things.
Will we have to know all 7 of them? Or will we ask for like 4 out of 7 or something?
More than likely ask you maybe to list a few, maybe list 1 or 2, but to be able to explain them. So like physical barriers. Why would we say physical barriers is a non-specific defense?
Why
how do we explain that physical barriers protect us from certain things?
Scared.
Because they don't have a specified target.
They don't have a specified target, but what do they do?
Block them.
Yeah, they block the physical barriers, block things out, and don't let them get into your system.
So I was told they're the first line of defense.
That would go fine as long as there was extra stuff.
That's what hair.
But when we're talking about the immune response here, we're not talking about like physical damage. We're talking about like bacteria and viruses and those sort of pathogens infecting us.
I understand.
Okay. So remember, phagocytes are actually a non-specific defense. They kind of go around glommering onto any old cell that shouldn't be there.
They attack anything.
Right. So that's a non-specific defense because they're not going to hunt out specifically this virus or this bacteria. So as far as specific defenses, that's where we talked about actual immunity. Okay, and so we looked at specificity, versatility, memory, but you should also know the difference between passive and active immunity. So how would we explain the difference between passive and active immunity?
Passive is transferred to the atmosphere of another person.
It's one way.
They're induced.
Okay. I mean, passive is basically anything that your body hasn't directly done. And so yes, passive antibodies from another person to you would be passive, but also remember we have just the innate immunity. The fact that there are lots of viruses and bacteria that just are not set up to infect you in any way. So there's diseases you can't get just because you're human and not a bunny rabbit. I don't know. Well, I mean, yeah, that doesn't take into account that mutations can happen. But
It could be more with AIDS.
no.
Oh.
We're talking about mutations of the virus. So the AIDS virus, when it first started out, it wasn't able to infect humans. We think there's a little bit of speculation going on there, but over time there was a mutation that caused it to be able to infect humans. So we lost our innate immunity to that because it mutated. Okay, you should be able to talk about vaccines and how they work. You should be able to describe the different types of immune disorders. You should be able to tell the difference between an autoimmune disorder and an immunodeficiency. And you should also be able to explain what allergies are.
Body attack stuff that won't hurt you.
Allergies are your body reacting as if something could infect you when it in fact won't. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much it.